Hello and welcome to today's video. My name is Xodas and today I want to talk about something that I have just been dying to dig into, and that is Frost DK, two-handed Frost DK, and all the Shadowlands changes. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. It helps tremendously the algorithm, and if you want to see more videos like this about Frost DK, Shadowlands, pre-patch, any of that, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell notification so you get notified every time I upload a video. Without further ado, let's go ahead and hop into this. Alright, so I've already recorded this video once, but to be honest, it got a little bit on the angry and just became a real downer, man. So I wanted to retry it, and this time I'm going to go over the things that I like first, and then some of the problems we have and things that need to be fixed. So Blizzard, if you're watching, please pay extra attention to that section of the video. But anyways, I wanted to try this again, so let's go over it. And that begins with, first of all, two-handed Frost DK. I love it. I feel like I'm back home again. It feels great. It does do a little less damage than Dual Wield does at the moment, but honestly, and you'll see what I mean over the course of the video, I would be extremely surprised if Blizzard does not do a balancing update to Frost DKs before the pre-patch launches. If they didn't, it would be very sad. So, along with things that I like about the changes and the new direction for Frost DK, is that we've got a whole lot of new abilities, like, well, not really new, but returning abilities, and they're really good ones. So, first off, we have Lichborn, which turns you undead, is able to break you out of several different CCs. It allows you to heal yourself with Death Coil, and this is a huge, much appreciated return to the class. It does need a little bit of tuning. Right now, it doesn't really heal that much. It never was like a heavy healer for Frost DK back when we had it, but it definitely is underperforming in comparison to how it did back then. Another amazing return is the anti-magic zone, and this one, no gripes. I'm just glad we have it back. It is a much welcomed addition to the toolkit. We have Raised Dead back, which is awesome. First of all, imagine a DK that can't summon a ghoul. I mean, that's just wrong. It's just wrong. So I'm glad that we have Raised Dead back. And with that, we got Sacrificial Pact. We'll get Sacrificial Pact at level 54. Which allows you to sacrifice your rune. We had this back in the day. All DKs had this back in the day. It looks like it will cost 20 runic power, which I don't think it cost runic power back in the day. I'll have to Google that and see, because I don't think it cost runic power. I don't think it really should cost runic power, but I don't know. We'll see. Anyways, 2-minute cooldown, heals you for 25% of your maximum health. That is awesome. DKs need more of that healing. That's always been a big part of DKs. It's not been that much a part of DKs for the last 2 expansions. Death Strike's been a joke. There's been no other way to really heal yourself. Along with that, and Shadowlands, it looks like we will be getting a couple of passive ranks, and everything here looks good. Obliterate damage increased by 20%. It's not going to be massive, but it's going to be, a little extra damage, and that's awesome. And Power Rune Weapon's going to be 15 seconds shorter, which is always welcome. Killing Machine is going to get an upgrade, so it'll make Obliterate also deal frost damage, which is cool because frost damage, of course, scales with our mastery, and so that is freaking awesome. I'm looking forward to see how much frost damage does it do, and is stacking mastery going to be the single play, which I personally prefer. Either way, I'm super glad to see mastery being incorporated into Obliterate. I think that's awesome. Oh, and we got Death Coil back, which allows us to, of course, heal ourselves using Lichborn. So that's pretty cool. There's not much reason to use it outside of Lichborn because it doesn't do a lot of damage. It requires a lot of runic power. So really, unless you're forced to range for some reason, someone's kiting you, or boss mechanic won't let you get to the boss, outside of that and healing yourself, no reason you'll ever use it, but that's okay. Doesn't really need to be any heavier of a presence in the Frost DK build. It never has before, and I don't really feel like it needs to now. So, hell yeah, happy about it. Another thing that I really like about Frost DKs in Shadowlands and in the pre-patch is all the new really cool runes. I mean, we got a lot of really cool and interesting ones. Rune of Hysteria, I can see a couple of builds where this is going to be a lot of fun. So Rune of Hysteria I think is really cool because I think it pairs really nicely with Dual Wield Frost CK and Hypothermic Presence. So Rune of Hysteria increases your runic power by 20, like maximum you can possibly have, so you'll be able to have 120 runic power max, and it procs a increase to your runic power generation by 20% for 8 seconds. And it procs a lot. This thing procs all the time. I mean, I've literally seen it proc before it's even like the original cast. It'll proc a second time before the original cast is even done. So between that and the passive runic power generation that Dual Wield is capable of putting out, I just think is going to be a great pairing, and I'm looking forward to giving it a shot. Now, sadly, this Rune Forge isn't all that great for two-hander. In fact, you barely even really notice it. And the reason for that is because two-hander is doing just fine on resource management. I'm actually really surprised, and I do have a bit of a high haste build. I'm like a 16% haste, 53% mastery. But honestly, like, I'm hardly ever reaching an actual like dead zone. Very rarely. And so part of that is because of my character's haste. I also have the Vita Charge Titan Shard, even though it's only raid fighter quality. But ultimately, like, yeah, it does. I feel just fine on resources, and I think that's probably gonna be just fine on resources. So I don't really feel like Rune of Hysteria really stands out to it. And since two-hander and Breath of Sindragosa aren't always the most common things to go hand in hand, since Breath of Sindragosa relies on having an overabundance of resources, and two-hander historically does not have that, I feel like chances are not so many people are going to be wanting to run Hysteria on a two-hander. But who knows, maybe a meta and some crazy build will pop up around it, and I'm super excited to see that. Apocalypse sounds really interesting. So this one gives your ghoul a chance on attack to put a debuff on the enemy target, and it could be one of 4 different effects, and they're the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So it's plague, famine, death, and war. Pestilence, not plague, pestilence. And so each one of these does stuff like reduces healing taken to the enemy, reduces damage done to you, slows the target, deals damage over time. This is going to be really interesting. I feel like it's going to need like specific testing in PvE and in PvP. So I haven't tested it yet because I just don't feel like I'm going to really see the benefit on a target dummy. So this is going to need more in-depth testing, but I have a feeling it's going to be a major RNG machine, and I feel like it will probably have its place. Like every now and again, it could be really cool, but I feel like most of the time it probably won't be as effective as one of the others, like Hysteria or Razor Ice for dual wield and Fallen Crusader for two-hander. Another thing I'm excited about, and this isn't just DK specific actually, is that they removed the Honorable Medallion and the other 2 options, Adaptation and Relentless or whatever. They removed those entirely, if you don't know, and they're putting it on the regular PvP trinket that you get from PvP. So that is awesome. I like that a lot. I didn't like Adaptation or Relentless, and I really feel like I always just felt like it should just be a trinket. Now, this does mean that for humans, that since they nerfed every man for ourself, which is now called Will to Survive, kind of sucks for us, but you know, we're kind of in the same boat as everybody else now, I suppose. And now, time for something I'm not sure if I like or I dislike it, and that is Frostwyrm's Fury. So this was made baseline, and I don't know how I feel about it. On one side, I'm happy because it's a cool button. It is a cool button, and it's nice to not have that in the talent tree, and they replaced it with Hypothermic Presence. And Hypothermic Presence is pretty cool, so honestly, I think that's great. Like, we got a really cool choice, and they removed something that was a bit of a no-brainer for certain builds, and like Gathering Storm is of course like a really good option too. This is the option that I've personally been running for a while. What I don't like about it though is now that it's baseline, I am a little concerned that they may try to actually remove damage from the rest of our rotation to kind of make up for it. So Frostwyrm's Fury is a pretty hefty attack. It does 3,500 damage right now, and Obliterate does 690. So it's a pretty chunky attack. So if their idea is that, and I've seen this done before, it's why I'm worried about this, is that if this adds 3,500 extra damage into our rotation every 3 minutes, then do they have to subtract that damage from other sources to like keep the scales in balance or some crap like that? I don't know. I've seen them do it before, and I'm kind of concerned that they might do it here because right now we're in a problem of our abilities feel weak. We need our abilities to feel stronger, and we'll talk more about that in the next section. But I don't feel like the last thing we need is for Frostwyrm's Fury being added to incentivize them not buffing other abilities. I'm not a fan of that possibility. But if they don't do that, then yeah, super yay, we have the dragon. The dragon's cool. All right, and now it's time to talk about things I'm not so happy about. And this is going to be more about like gameplay and philosophy and the way that my own personal opinion too, like very much so. So first of all, the talents, man. The talents have been the same since Legion. Like we got hypothermic presence and we got a little buff on ice cap. It went from 3 seconds to 4 seconds of reduction. That's great. Absolutely great. But there's so many things like Cold Heart, dead talent. It was too good for a while there, and it also I think it's a dumb talent in general. I hate this talent. I'm glad it's dead, but it's also a dead freaking talent. Like I'm not happy with it. Icy Talons makes little to no difference for neither Frost or two-handed Frost DK. There's a little bit of an argument for it if you do the right kind of build for dual wield. There's a certain argument for it, but honestly, it makes little to no difference, and it kind of pisses me off that was an actual like passive, like everybody had it. Every Frost DK had Icy Talons, or like originally, like a long time ago before we went to the new talent system. And so that leaves a bad taste in my mouth that they're trying to like sell us on something we used to have. Then Inexorable Assault is obnoxious. It should be called the obnoxious assault. I hate it. It's boring. It does nothing. I mean, you just get this random stack of a buff once every 8 seconds, and it makes your obliterate do a little bit extra damage. I mean, cool, like obliterate damage, yay. But at the same time, like, boo, this is boring. Like, give us something cooler, please. It is what it is. Runic Attenuations. Auto attacks have a chance to generate 3 runic power. Horn of Winter is cool, but it's got too long of a cooldown and doesn't give you enough runic power. Runic Attenuation's boring as a passive. Murderous Efficiency I think it does have a place in a dual wield playstyle if that's what you're into. But for two-hander, this is not even an option because part of two-hander, we'll talk about this in a moment, part of two-hander's problem is we don't get enough killing machine procs. We get like half as many as you do when you're dual wielding. This row is pretty much fine. It's a standard run-of-the-mill CC row. Blinding Sleet's cool, 68, love it, and Death's Reach cool when you're leveling. Row number 35 is literally like, I hate this row. I hate it. Frozen Pulse, boring. It makes your auto attacks radiate intense cold, dealing 53 frost damage. Yeah, that's the best choice on this row. I'm sorry, it makes you do like 3 or 4% more damage than any of the other 3 buttons. Frost Scythe has a place in the but you have to have a lot of crit to really make it make sense, and it's really only good in like dungeons and high AoE scenarios. Personally, I also hate Frost Scythe. I think it should be removed. And then Avalanche is like the coolest of these 3 in my opinion, but it just does not hold up to either Frozen Pulse in single target or AoE, and it doesn't hold up to Frost Scythe in AoE. This row is pretty decent. Permafrost I actually think is kind of cool. Sadly, you don't really notice it in PvP, especially as a two-handed Frost DK because your auto attacks are so slow in comparison to dual wield. So that's kind of rough. I'm thinking about trying out Death Pact, which I would be better if it didn't come with such like a negative effect. I'm looking forward to getting Sacrificial Pact at level 54. That way I can I probably will run either Permafrost for the Absorb, and I'll run Wraithwalk for the extra mobility. And then Gathering Storm, Hypothermic Presence, and Glacial Advance. This is like one of the most interesting choices in our entire talent tree. Gathering Storm is really good. Hypothermic Presence I think can be really good if you use it right, if you use it in the right environment. Glacial Advance though, dead talent. I mean, it sounds cool. It's cool in theory, but it doesn't do enough damage. It's too expensive. It's not worth. I mean, it's just not worth. You compare it to your Frost Strike and it's like, why would I ever choose this over Frost Strike? I don't think it has a real place in it just doesn't make sense. It's not good enough. And then your final row is the actual most interesting choice, and this is essentially, how do you like to burst? Do you like the Ice Cap build where you get to burst all the time, like literally like every 30 seconds you're bursting? Do you like Obliteration where you burst a little less often if you're coming from an Ice Cap build, but you basically get a lot of Killing Machine procs, which I think this is going to be really good for two-hander because it makes up for that major problem of not having enough Killing Machine procs? Or are you going to run Breathless and Dragosa, which can be done on a two-hander if you're really good at managing your resources, but is really more of like a dual wield centric build, and definitely more of a PvE centric build, since in any kind of high level PvP they're just going to stun you, CC you, or stop you from getting runic power in one way or another, and they're just going to waste your breath every time. So yeah, I really feel like the Frost DK talents could use a little love. I mean, they could definitely use a little facelift. There's a few like pointless buttons on here. There's a lot of passives, and the passives almost always tend to be the best choice, which is a really big shame. I mean, look here, passive, 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 Ice Cap, which is the build I run, passive. The only thing that's not passive here is Asphyxiate, you know, Obliteration, passive. Best in Dragosa and Hypothermic Presence are the only two abilities on this thing that you're going to be using most of the time. You know, Wraithwalk or Death Pact on occasion. I mean, that's just kind of like the reality. Is there's like 3 or 4 viable like options here that aren't passives. I think that's a major shame. And then the final thing that I am not too happy about with Frost DK at the moment is that because of its talents thing and because of the scaling, it plays like BFA Frost DK, just with more buttons, which I do love having more buttons. It makes the class feel a whole lot more fun, a whole lot more. I feel like I can actually do things now, like other than just hit stuff. I can actually do things. But I have a problem with the fact that like they've just kind of dropped two-handed Frost DK on top of the spec. So none of these talents, like Obliteration, like it kind of props up two-handed Frost, like maybe just a little bit. Inexorable Assault does, but for the same, in the same exact way it does Dual Wield. Like it doesn't really, like it's not like a two-hander specific thing. The talents don't support it. They haven't done any kind of like scaling or changed anything. Like the tune, there's no tuning. Like they literally just enabled the ability for your abilities to work while you're wearing a two-hander. And although it's cool because I'm wearing a two-hander, it's obvious that this is not tuned for a two-hander. And so I'm hoping that's not by design. I'm hoping they just haven't gotten to doing the balance updates. And the only reason I have any hope is because of some of the really good work they've done with other classes recently, like Shadow Priest and the Shamans, the Shaman specs, and a couple others. I'm actually really impressed with what they did with Warrior, of Arms Warrior. So I do have some hope, but I am a little concerned that maybe their plan is to have two-hander be an afterthought. And I really hope that's not the way they're going, because there's a lot of people, and I'm one of them, there's a lot of people that two-hander is all they've wanted from this game ever since the day it was removed. I mean, two-hander is iconic. It's iconic. It is, to me, it is the iconic definitive way to play Frost DK. I've been using the two-hander weapon as a Frost DK since Wrath of the Lich King, since day one. So, I mean, they can say all they want that their vision for a Frost DK is a dual wielder, but how can you say that when the vision of the people who play the class is not that? And so I hope that they're taking two-hander serious. I'm hoping they'll give it another pass, and I'm hoping that that they'll maybe even think about the talents, because right now Frost DK is not awful to play. Like, that's not the case at all. It's just a little boring. It's not as it plays very similar to BFA, exactly the same as BFA. You just have a couple more buttons, which is nice. It's really nice. But I really want to see Obliterate get a little touch up for two-hander. I want to see two-hander have its niche, and if that means they got to give us a little bit more downtime and up the damage on our Obliterate, I'm kind of okay with that. You know, like that's how it was back in the day. Like, as you can see, this whole time we've been talking, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to do a good job here. I'm not even looking half the time at my rotation or at my buttons. Like, I'm not running out of resources, you know? So I don't think they've tuned this at all. That's what my gut's telling me, is I don't think they've done any tuning whatsoever. So anyways, we've talked about this a lot. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, make sure you hit that subscribe button, and you ring that bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. I'm going to be uploading a ton of DK content, a ton of Shadowlands content, a ton of pre-patch content, and we're just going to be uploading all the content all the time. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a great day.